Hello everyone, today we are going to learn about creating a dashboard using an Excel document. So I have an example dataset here which we are going to use to create our dashboard. First, you need to create a table from the dataset that you have. So press Ctrl T to have the dataset selected, and as you can see, the table has been selected from cell A1 all the way to the last point where we have our dataset, that is cell G1000. So you can scroll down up to the end of the table, and as you can see, we have G1000 selected to form our table. Then you click OK, and then name the table to be sales table. The next step would be to start creating the pivot tables using this table of ours. So you click on Insert Pivot Table. So ensure that the table of interest is selected. In this case we have sales, and the pivot table will be created on a new worksheet. Then click OK. Label the table depending on the type of graph that you want to display. So in this case, we want to display the total number of sales per given store. So in this case, we'll type here store, and then we label the sheet and call that store. Then from here, we want to create our pivot table. So we click on store and then the total sales. So in this case, we want to have the sums of the total sales, and since we want our pivot table to be filtered by date, then we can carry on the date function into the filters section. So now we have the total sales and we have the stores. So the next thing is to set the value field settings, and in this case we want to change the number format. So click on the number format and then select accounting to ensure that the accounting symbol is well selected. So in this case we want to use the $sign. So we highlight that one and then select OK, and then click OK. So that gives us the total sales in dollars. Then the next step is to insert our chart. So we highlight on the pivot table and then move on to select the chart of interest. So we select a chart, and in this case the column chart has already been selected for us. So we click OK, and then we can now align the chart in our sheet. So in this case we want to remove all the field buttons on the chart by clicking on hide all field buttons on this chart, and then we don't need a legend, so we delete the legend. And then the next thing we want to do is to change our title. So this is total sales per store. And then the next thing we want to do is to change the color of our words and the labels. So we go to the font and then select the black color, and also you can change the type of the font by just typing there Times New Roman. So we have our graph with all the stores indicated and the total number of sales. However, the bars are too thin, so we can format the data series by reducing the width between the bars. So go to the width and you can reduce the width by the slider to the left, and as you can see we have the bars becoming more wide. So I want to reduce that further to 10%. That looks far much better. Then the next thing we want to do is create another histogram, and in this case we will use the same sheet to create another chart. Now you can right click on the sheet that you want to copy and then highlight on move or copy, then select where you want the sheet to be copied to, and then create a copy and then say OK. So this ensures that the pivot table refers to the same table as the previous pivot table. However, this time round you can change the name of the new sheet to reflect the new chart that you want to display. In this case we want to display the total sales per product. So in here we can type in product and then we change also the table title to product. So the next thing we want to do is ensure that we have our data sets reflecting the product. So we go to selecting the pivot table entries to product, remove the store, and then we have the date filter and the sum totals. So here you can see we have bar chart representing sales per store. However, it would be very monotonous to have all the graphs showing the same way. So in this case, we want to change the way this data is being displayed. So we can right click on the chart area and then change the chart type. So we want to change this chart type by making it horizontal bar graph, or we can as well make it a pie chart. So let's try to do it as a pie chart. We have several options. We can even do it as a 3-dimensional pie chart. So let's click OK, and that gives us a different display of our data set. So we can change the title here and we say sales per product, and then on this pie chart we can decide to add data labels. You can see that however they look squeezed. We can try to make this pie chart look more bigger, like that. That looks better. So next we need to make another pivot table. So we repeat the same procedure. Right click on the sheet name and then click on move or copy. Make sure you select create a copy, and then we say OK. This creates a new replica of the previous sheet, and we need to rename this to our next pivot table. So in this case we want to see the total sales per a salesperson. So here we will name our sheet to salesperson, and also remember to change the name of your table to salesperson. So in this case we will remove the product sheet from our table, and then we include the salesperson. So we want to change the chart type to something different. So we select on the chart and say change chart type. So we want to have a horizontal bar representing the sales per sales representative. So once we click OK, we can see now we have representative J, representative I, and the total sales per each individual. So in this case we need to change the title sales per salesperson. Then we click OK. So now the next step is to create our dashboard. We will need to have a new worksheet. We can rename this to be our dashboard, and then get into each of these other sheets where we have histograms and bar charts, and then cut each one of these, cut and paste in the dashboard, paste, then go to product and then cut, then paste into our dashboard, paste, and then finally we have the store, and then cut and then paste these into our dashboard. Now we have our sales numbers represented into 3 different images and graphs that can help us monitor the sales over time. So the next thing that we would wish to do to increase the width of each of the bars, we can reduce this into 10%. So now that looks more better. So the next thing is to align this and give our dashboard a name. Let's select these first 2 rows and shade them the gray color, and then put a title. This is a summary of the sales for the year, and then we can make this title font size to be bigger, yearly summaries, then change the font color to white. So the next step would be to introduce the slicers. So select on one of the graphs and then go to the insert tab and then select on the slicers, and then this gives you an opportunity to select the slicers that are of interest. So in our case here, we want to introduce the store slicer, the salesperson slicer, and the product slicer, and then click OK. So this will give us a chance to view our datasets based on the given options that we have. So we will drag and place the slicers on the left hand side of our dashboard so that we can easily navigate through. So we have the sales slicer, we have the store slicer, and then for the product slicer we can as well put it at the top and then create enough space for it, and then decide how many columns do we need for this slicer. So in this case we can try to increase the number of columns to 5 and then reduce the size that will be occupied by that slicer. So right now the next thing is to align our graphs so that everything is in line with the rest. So the next thing is to ensure that our dashboard does not have the grid lines. So we go to view and we make sure that our grid lines are not selected. That gives us a clean page. Then the other thing would be to link all the slicers with each of the tables. So we'll click on the slicer, check on the report connections. This one will show us the graphs that are linked to this slicer. So as you can see, we only have one graph being affected or being controlled by the first slicer. So in this case we'll need to select the other two and then click OK. That way if you select the slicer, then you can see it affecting the rest of the graphs. We need to do the same to the other slicers. So for the salesperson slicer, then we go to report connections, then select the product and store, then click OK. Then go to the product, right click, report connections, select the other two graphs and then click OK. So that way if you highlight on any of the options for each of the slicers, then you can definitely see the other two graphs being affected. That is how you make your dashboard an interactive dashboard. Then the other thing that you might want to do is to ensure that your slicers can be able to select multiple options. So in such a case you can select the multi-select option, which has an alternative of Alt S. So if you click on that, you are now able to select on several options from your slicer. And then the other thing that I would wish to mention is that you can customize your slicer by selecting on slicer settings. Make sure that you are not able to see items that have no data in them. So hide items with no data. So that way, if by any chance one of your options does not have data to represent in the graphs, then it will be hidden from your slicer. The other important thing to mention is that if you want to remove the filters, then you can always clear the filter by clicking this tab. So if you click on that, that clears all the filters and make sure that your slicer is able to project on the dataset that you have. So let's click that to remove the filters, and now you can see our dashboard with all the given data being represented. Then the last thing that you would wish to do is to remove the formula bar and also the heading, and that gives us a very nice display of our dashboard. Now after doing that, now you can save your document in your preferred folder. Remember to subscribe, like and share this presentation. Thank you.